get ready for the journey of a lifetime. Omega Metroid is excited to launch a new series exclusive to our Patreon channel, the Great Metroid Area Ranking. Our mission is simple. We are going to rank every single area in the Metroid series 2 at a time. Join us on our Patreon as we delve into all the different locales across this amazing series and get in on the action by helping dictate what areas we rank next. The Great Metroid Area Ranking is available to all Omega Metroid tier patrons. Join us on this incredible adventure and help us decide for the final time which Metroid area is the greatest of them all. OmegaMetroid.com's Patreon is the home to the Great Metroid Area Ranking, ROM Hack reviews, the Spiteri Show, and so much more. Consider signing up today, and see you next mission. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri, and I am solo this week. We had a snafu in our recording schedule, so the timing didn't quite line up for Dak and for Doom and for myself. So we are once again dipping into the old Patreon bag to release a brand new episode never heard before by anyone that wasn't a member of our Patreon account. So this is a back into the ROM hack reviews category, and there's a really cool ROM hack called Metroid Scrolls 6. And the idea behind this is it's kind of a mashup of Metroid Zero Mission with Elder Scrolls, or like just basically RPG elements and all that kind of good stuff. This was originally published back in August of 2022, so we're digging it out from the vault. I'll give a slight spoiler. I had a lot of fun with this particular ROM hack, so looking forward to everybody getting to hear it and checking out exactly what is going on with that ROM hack. Shout out to Connor, 1 of 99, CaptGlitch, and JRP for getting this ROM hack created and across the finish line. Excellent job, and always in awe of the people that can put their talents towards making fun games for us to play. So yeah, that's what we got on tap for this week. We are going to be back next week. So, and in fact, next week we are going to be doing a fan Q&A. So either get your questions in over on Blue Sky, check us out at Omega Metroid Pod, or check us out in Discord as well. We're going to have the call out for questions going live in Discord. So 2 options for you, Blue Sky or Discord. You can get your questions answered next week, and they could be about anything really, anything Metroid related or whatever have you. So make sure that you're getting in on that. And everybody, please enjoy this ROM hack review. Again, we'll see you all next week, and everybody take care. Bye. What's up, Omega Metroid patrons? We are back for another installment of the ever-popular Metroid ROM Hack review series. And this is probably the freshest one that I've done so far, because I just finished this game like 3 hours ago, something like that, and had a lot of fun with it. So I'm very excited to talk about it today, and I wanted to talk about it and release this episode kind of quickly so that I could actually move on to my next Metroid ROM hack review game, which I have already downloaded and got it queued up. I want to kind of get that one out a little bit earlier next month, just because I'm going on a trip for the latter half of September, so I want to make sure that that one is played and thoughts are recorded and all of that good stuff. But so today we are here to talk about Metroid Scrolls 6. And this is a Metroid Zero Mission hack, which was actually the first ever Zero Mission hack that I have done. So every single hack that I've done so far has either been a Nestroid hack or it's been a Super Metroid hack. So there were a lot of things in this particular hack that I really loved that were like just the virtue of it being in Zero Mission rather than in Super or Nestroid or whatever. And I'll kind of point out what some of those things are. But yeah, I was pretty pleased with this hack, and especially, like I said, it was my first Zero Mission hack that I had played, and I came out, I think, really kind of appreciating like Metroid Zero Mission just in general. Like obviously it's an incredibly fun game, but just the controls, everything like that. So and of course those controls go to this game too, and it plays beautifully. But let's start right from the top and talk about this game. So Metroid Scroll 6 is a Zero Mission hack, as I said, and it was originally made for the 2018 Berserker contest. I'm not really sure what that is, but I think it's like a hacking contest or something like that. And it was made by a team of developers, Connor, One of 99, CaptGlitch, and JRP. And so the version that they made that was submitted to the Berserker contest back in 2018 has been kind of overhauled and revamped and just kind of given a little bit of sheen, if you will, and was re-released last year in 2021. So yeah, I got to playing, and one of the first things that I noted right away, actually, was that there was only 2 difficulty settings, which I thought was kind of funny, because like it was Novice and it was Expert. So I was like, I don't know, I kind of thought it was funny. I was like, all right, what do you want the room temperature to be, like Sahara Desert or Arctic Tundra? So I went with Expert. I was like, I'm pretty good at Metroid games. I think I can fare decently well here. So went with Expert, and I would say that I don't really regret that. There was definitely a few bosses, which we'll talk about, that were challenging, but I think that for the most part, like most of it was pretty easy. Like I actually think that Metroid Zero Mission is like a really easy game, like in general. It's a really easy Metroid game. So I felt comfortable challenging Expert here, and sometimes I found that Expert in these hacks can mean like difficulty of enemies, but also just like difficulty in like the terrain and like navigating and stuff like that. Like for example, in Super Duper Metroid, that one was like a difficult in the sense that like you just didn't anticipate going to the areas that you had to in order to progress, because conventional wisdom would say that these areas should be off limit until you get the required power up to make you be able to explore them fully. So this game was none of that. Everything was fairly like straightforward, and aside from, like I said, a few bosses, the difficulty wasn't too bad either. So if you're gonna play this, I would definitely recommend on Expert. I can't even imagine what the game is like on Novice. It must be like literally like a walk in the park. But yeah, so this is it's a cool kind of premise. Everything in this game is kind of presented in like an RPG way, and with RPG terms. So, and to be specific, like Skyrim or Elder Scrolls in particular, which is probably where the name comes from. But so for example, like Samus's suit will be a cloak, so you don't get new suits, you get different cloaks. All of the beams are tomes, so like different kind of magic that you can use. Missiles are called casting, like et cetera, et cetera. You just go down the list. It's very charming. I wouldn't say that plays like a huge thread into the actual game itself, other than a few kind of like funny instances here and there. But just a little charming thing that makes this game stick out a little bit. And the story is also incredible. The game starts off, and Samus says, "I'm bored. I'm going to go and slay some dragons." And I was like, hell yeah, this sounds awesome. So I was ready to go and slay dragons in this new world. So it's worth mentioning too, this is a completely new world that you're traversing, new different areas. There's 7 areas in total. You've got a new soundtrack. You've got it's incredibly well made. Like the pixel work is absolutely phenomenal. And there are some areas of like the pixel work that look repurposed from other games. Like there are some areas where I'm like, okay, this is this is from this Metroid game or whatever, or this is like a different shade of this tile from a Metroid game. But it felt like to me like there was a lot of really original sprite work in this game as well, and we'll talk about that as we kind of get to the areas. But I was very impressed with just kind of the world that they created. The soundtrack is awesome. And I'm actually going to link the soundtrack in the episode description because I think the whole thing is available on SoundCloud. But yeah, I mean, that package was really great. And so I'm going to talk about the different areas in this game because I feel like that's kind of like the main selling point of the game, obviously. But before we get there, I did want to mention just a few quick gameplay quirks. One thing, somebody might have to correct me on this because I don't remember if you can do this in the Zero Mission base game or not, but I don't think that you can. But one thing that I tried to do like immediately in this game was do a single wall jump like you do in Super Metroid. So in Super Metroid, you can, like, if there's a flat wall, you can literally just wall jump and you'll kind of float back and hit the same wall and then wall jump higher and higher. And you could scale like a 100-story building just doing that. In a Metroid Fusion, you cannot do that. Your wall jump will send you shooting one direction. And in fact, pretty much every single Metroid game since Super Metroid has implemented this. Like in Metroid Dread, you can't do that either. So you can do that in Scroll 6, which is very cool. So I'm a big fan of that. There is a little bit of that like Metroid Fusion heaviness that prevents you from doing it as easy as you would in Super Metroid. I would actually say like the physics of this game are really nice, and I appreciate the physics of Zero Mission just in general, which obviously this game has. Because like, you know, I know a lot of people say that Super Metroid is a very floaty kind of game, but that was my first Metroid game, so that was kind of like the standard for me. Whereas when I played Metroid Fusion, I was like, oh man, Samus feels like she is 1,000 pounds. Like, it feels very heavy. It feels very, I don't know, just clunky almost at times. And I think that Zero Mission is kind of a nice meeting of the middle for both those games. So it's a nice blend, and obviously they use that engine in this game as well. So jumping, traversing, everything like that feels really, really smooth. But yeah, so most of the game is built around, obviously the game is built around the different areas that you go to, but this game actually a little bit more specifically is it's designed a little bit different. So I'm going to run through all the areas and I'll kind of describe them as best as I can without going like too in detail in case you guys actually want to play this game for yourself, because I do think that, there is some kind of value in being like, whoa, this is so cool, and like kind of experiencing it. But we'll go area by area and we'll just talk about them. So the first area is called Solemn, which I thought that was kind of funny. It was it's SOLUM, but obviously it's a play on words for the word solemn, which is a little bit on the nose for Metroid. But hey, what are you gonna do? So the first thing that I noticed about this area is that it kind of starts off as like, a lot of Metroid games do, where you're kind of in like this cavernous, rocky area, but very quickly you actually move on to like this beautiful sky that's in the background, and like it's daytime, and I feel like you don't really see a whole lot of that in Metroid. Like you kind of get glimpses of it in Samus Returns when you're on the surface of SR388, but other than that, like I feel like you don't get a lot of like sunshine and kind of happy background or whatever in Metroid. So this is kind of a breath of fresh air to see. And this area is kind of it's exactly what I would describe as a hub area. So this game works a little bit differently in terms of areas than most Metroid games do, which I guess is fair because it's trying to emulate like an Elder Scrolls game. But, I mean, those are big open world games too, so they don't work exactly the same either. But anyways, so Solemn is a big hub area, and all of the other areas, except for one, are connected to Solemn. So you'll have to go through, and you can fiddle around and traverse through most of Solemn. But after that, you can pick a bunch of different directions that you want to go in, which is actually kind of cool because, as far as I know, And as far as I could tell, you can pick almost any of the 6 areas to start with, and you can more or less finish almost all of them without any of the other particular upgrades. So each area has like a boss, and it has an upgrade, and it has a rune, which I'll talk about in a second, for you to find. But for the most part, you can go in and complete them kind of one-off. Like, there's not really any interconnectivity between the areas. You have your hub world in Solemn, and then each area is kind of its self-contained own little thing. So it's kind of like Metroid Fusion, actually, in a way, where like each sector was kind of their own little thing. And I know that towards the end of Metroid Fusion, it started to get a little bit more interconnected. This game doesn't. So this game presents you these areas, and they are segmented. They are standalone areas, and I think that there's one that you need a certain power up, maybe one or two that you need a certain power up to really get like the full like experience and access to the boss. But yeah, so Solemn is kind of that hub world, and we've seen a few of those before in Metroid. Like, you could say Talon Overworld, it comes to mind as a good example of that. But this kind of is like very upfront with what it is. So it's pretty cool area. Like, it's very different. It's got a different kind of vibe to it, a different feel, and the music is actually really nice too. It's like I said, the whole game has an original soundtrack. So this music is kind of it's like Metroid-y, definitely, but I found a lot of the music to kind of be a little bit more upbeat in a lot of different areas than than you might expect for a Metroid game. And I guess that kind of matches with like the beautiful sky and sun and whatever that are there as well. So I'm going to run you through the areas in the way that I did them, and this is definitely not probably the correct or intended way to do them. But here we go. So Mons is the next area that you go to, and this is kind of a tale of a couple different areas. So this is actually the biggest area in the entire game, Solemn included, and it's kind of it's like a big grayscale when you walk in. Like, everything's kind of gray and rocky and stuff like that. And then you get to like the inner part of it, and it's like this deep blue, crystalline looking aesthetic. It's very, very gorgeous. The music is like very brooding, but it has kind of like that drum beat to it that you might like you would kind of associate that with like a military or something like that. So it's got kind of that snappy track to it, and there's water everywhere. And one actually thing that I thought was really cool, and I'm not sure that a bunch of Metroid games do, is the water that's on the ground is flowing one way. So it will either push you really quickly in one direction if you're going the way of the water, or you'll have to kind of fight to gain traction with it going the other way, which when you get the speed boost is actually kind of cool because you can charge up your boost a little bit faster. So the ground is moving as you go. I thought that was a really nice touch. And there's a fiery part as well to this area, which has red crystalline and has like heated rooms and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different areas where you can explore in here. I would liken this kind of like to like a Brinstar, I guess, in that it's kind of like a versatile, like, jack of all trade areas. You've got a bunch of different things going on. Most of the areas I found in this game kind of have like one or two signature spots to them. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. And this one was just kind of like the standard area that you could go to and explore, and it's certainly the one that you will probably keep coming back to the most if you are like interested in getting all of the different power-ups and stuff like that. So yeah, that was the second area of Mons. The third area that I went to, this is the only one that I went to that I couldn't really progress all that far into. But the third area is called Littore, and it's really funky when you go into there for the first time. There's this like funky desert music that's playing, and it's like a desert kind of area, like very, very sandy, very yellow. There's lots of parts of this game actually that just don't feel Metroid like at all, but they do feel like something that you would see on like the SNES in like a random, like an X-Men game or something, just kind of like a weird level that doesn't necessarily fit there, but they're going to base it off of a desert area anyways. So this area was pretty cool, but I was stopped because I did need the speed boost, and the speed boost is actually one of the last items that I acquired. So I wasn't able to fully explore, but when I did come back later in the game, I went into the bottom half, and this was actually like really cool. So I went into the bottom half, and it transformed into like an underwater area, and it actually used the exact same tile work and sprite work as Metroid Fusion in Sector 4. So like all the same enemies were there, the kind of corally kind of walls and stuff like that. It was very cool, and like a cool blending of Fusion and Zero Mission. So I quite liked this area a lot. Not the biggest area, but that's okay. It was fun enough, and it's kind of like a short burst almost, which was very fun. The fourth area that I went to is an area called Turim, and this area was like very creeping and very brooding. I would say, and the music was brooding as well. I would say similar to Red Brinstar specifically. Lots of platforming on this area, and lots of like pitfall blocks that you could step on them, and in a second they would slowly dissolve. So this area was probably my favorite, and this actually has also the only other area in the game that's not connected to the hub world, which is the final area, which we'll talk about in a bit. But yeah, so Turim had a lot of platforming, like a lot of precise jumping that you had to do, and a lot of like really small, tight corridors. And there would be all those, I forget the actual name of them, but it either Rios or, I think they're Rios. Like whatever those awful bugs are that get right up in your face and they're right beside you and you're just like, oh, go away. And it was really tight quarters, so you kind of had a hard time avoiding them. So this was kind of a cool area that put your like platforming skills to work a little bit, which I appreciate. So this was a very like distinct kind of area. So far we've had like the general area in Mons, we've had the hub world of Solemn, the water/desert area of Litore, and then the platforming kind of broody level of Turim. So definitely each place has their own identity so far, and that continues with arcs. Arcs? I don't know. It's spelled ARX. Arcs? I feel like I sound like a fool, but this area was pretty cool too. Again, very funky music. And this area is full of like those speedball boosters. I don't know if that's exactly what they're called, but you basically get into your morph ball form and you go into the little hole and you lay a bomb, and the booster will like rocket you in a certain direction. And there are a ton of these different boosters in here. So it's almost like and the background too is very, very cool. It's like this dark gray, cloudy kind of like a, not brooding, but it's very dark, very ominous, very like magic looking. And it's even cooler when you're in these morph ball launchers, because once you get in, it shoots you like across the screen and you're flying and you're like doing all this cool stuff. And one of the really cool things is like after you break through and you land where you're supposed to, there are certain points where if you want to, you can actually drop back down and just like fall through the sky. And there's a couple expansions actually that are hidden, and you can only access them if you fall back where you're shot through and kind of position yourself at the side of the screen where you can land on a ledge or whatever and get an expansion. So this was a very cool area. I'm a big fan of like, I mean, obviously shine sparking in Metroid in general, but like specifically like shine sparking when you're like flying through the sky and crashing and doing all that cool stuff. So this was probably my second favorite area. It was very, very cool. And the next area that, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have said that was my second favorite, because this one was also, this area was so awesome. This area is called Silva. And the music is very reminiscent of Green Brinstar, like the overgrown with vegetation mix. And the area is kind of almost similar in vibe, but it's like, it's an outdoor kind of jungly area with kind of a tranquil, like little vibe to it. But there's lots of trees, and like a lot of the platforming that you're doing is going to be like jumping from tree to tree. So it's like, it almost feels like prehistoric somehow. Like you're like playing like the Lion King on the SNES and you're jumping from tree to tree. This was a very, very cool area. Lots of like tight platforming and like you had to make fairly long specific jumps. So that was pretty cool. It was very bright, very happy, very, very visually pleasing, which again is not something that you really expect to see in a lot of Metroid games. Like, you know, we played Vitality a few months ago, and that game went so out of its way to be dark and brooding, which really worked for that game. But I feel like it really works for Scrolls in the way that it's kind of presenting like a happy, vibrant world for you to explore. So those are the worlds so far, and then the final world is named Umbra, and this is the final area of the game. It's the only one that's not attached to Solemn. You have to go through Turim, and you have to go all the way up, and you have to go and basically get to the area that way. There's really not much to this area, actually, truth be told. It's only like 3 or 4, maybe 5 rooms or whatever. But it does look pretty cool for what it is. It looks like a space station, and you can see space in the background, so it looks very badass. Kind of looks like, you know, in Metroid Fusion, when you're going in the like the connectors that take you from like Sector 1 to Sector 6 or whatever, and you can see outer space in the background. That's kind of what this area looks like. Very, very, very cool. It looks very sci-fi. The music is cool. It's a shame that you're not in here for too long. I think that there's a couple of hidden expansions, and that's about it. But it basically just works as a way to get you to the final boss. And yeah, there's not really a whole lot to it, unfortunately. But still pretty cool. So that's all the areas of the game. You've got the happy prehistoric tree area, Silva. You've got the dark, cloudy, flying through the air Arcs area, Turim, and the platforming and brooding music. Latore, the water area with Sector 4, but also got the desert. Mons is kind of like your standard Metroid platforming level, and it's got heated rooms, sunken rooms, like all the kind of cool stuff that you want. And then, of course, you have everything tying it together with Solemn. So the world design in here is super, super awesome, and it was kind of refreshing in a way to be able to just have each area kind of present their own unique thing going on. And I don't know, I wouldn't want any of my Metroid games like to not feature that interconnectivity, but I do think that if you do it sparingly, like if you do have a Metroid game like this that doesn't feature that sparingly, it can be effective just because it's different. So the whole goal of this game is, like I said, Samus has decided that she's bored and she wants to go and fight a dragon, and you can piece together who you think that dragon is or what that dragon is. I'm going to be talking about it in a second here, but the idea is that each world connected to Solemn will have a boss for you to defeat, and what the goal is to collect, they call them runes. So you want to collect 6 runes. So kind of imagine like the Super Metroid room with like the statues of the 4 bosses or whatever, except this one there's 6. So you got to go defeat all these 6 bosses, and only then will you have access to the dragon. So very appropriately, the first boss that I encountered in this game was Big Daddy Kraid. And first of all, Kraid looks so awesome in Metroid Zero Mission. He looks so wicked. Just like the headpiece on him with like the spikes, just like, oh man, he looks so good. And his theme song in this game was awesome. It was so groovy. I actually had, believe it or not, I actually had a little bit of a tough time with this guy because I went in and so he's the first boss that I faced, like I mentioned. And also, like I mentioned, you can more or less do all of the different areas in, whatever way that you want. There are some that will limit you, but more or less you can do the areas in whatever order you want. So I took this one first, and I got Kraid first. So I'm fighting him. I think I have 2 energy tanks. I have about 10 missiles. I do not have the charge beam, and that was a huge thing. So I did not have the charge beam because if I did, I would have totally used it after I ran out of missiles. And I can't remember if Zero Mission, the Kraid fight does this as well, but the platforms that you stand on when you are, so you start the fight and you're basically looking at his head, and if you fall down, you've kind of got to scale back up to get back to where you want to be. But the platforms at the very top eventually fall away after a little bit of time. So if you want to get back up to the top, you basically have to stand on the little, like, platform things that Kraid shoots out of his belly button, which is actually, like, super gross now that I said that. But that's the only way to get back to the top. And then, getting up there and just firing my measly little beams at him, which I didn't have any other beam at this point either, by the way. It was just the standard power beam. So this one was a little bit challenging, actually. Gave me a little bit of a rough time. But I beat him, and I got my first rune, so that was fun. This next thing whipped ass. It was so awesome. So, and this is in Mons, by the way. I fought Kraid in Mons. It's also in Mons. I go through, and I'm getting to the bottom. I'm trying to get the various suit, which they call a different type of suit in this game, or a different type of cloak, in this game. And who do I see? Our old friend Arachnus. But Arachnus is not alone. He has brought his identical twin brother. So that's right, there were 2 Arachnuses that you were fighting, and these are the fusion models of Arachnus as well. And it was just like really intense. I can't say that they were very challenging because I feel like Arachnus is a pretty easy boss, especially in Fusion. That boss is your first boss that you'll encounter in the game. But just like, I don't know, I thought it was so cool, like fighting 2 of these guys at the same time. I was just like, all right, let's do it. And that was it was pretty sweet. So the next couple bosses on this list that I did, I think kind of brought back into it brought back into a realization of mine, in that I think that by and large, and you guys can feel free to disagree with me if you want, but I think that by and large, the bosses of Metroid Zero Mission are not like super. It's not that they're not fun. They're just like, they're all like really easy, and like I said, I think Zero Mission is an easy game. So the next boss that I did, I had to fight the Acid Worm, whose name is Diorum. And I was clearly supposed to fight this guy earlier in the game. So he shows up in Solemn. I was clearly supposed to fight him like basically right away, and I was supposed to get the charge beam. So I only did that after I beat Kraid, and I was like, man, this would have been really useful to have in that fight. But just absolutely walloped him into the other side of the moon, and got my charge beam, which was really nice. And then there was a series of bosses that you get to fight. So you got the Kiru larva, and for any of you that do not remember this guy, he is he's kind of like the flying. He's kind of like this attached like bug thing that you fight, and he's ensnared, and he's got like little spores. He's kind of like Spore Spawn almost, but he is just like the biggest absolute pushover that anybody has ever seen in this entire world. So I fought him in, I want to say, Arcs, and just like completely walloped him to get my my third rune. I'm sorry. So I got that from him. And then the next boss was Imago, who is like the big kind of fly. And he is also like pathetically easy. And I'm pretty sure this guy was fought in Silva. Just completely dismantled him and got the rune as well. So I was kind of going through this game, and I'm like, man, everything's kind of easy. But the third area that I went to, Turim, had the Chozo test boss. And oh my god. So I think that when you're playing Zero Mission, this boss isn't that hard, because of course you're fighting this boss as Zero Suit Samus. So it's not like a traditional boss in the strictest sense, right? So like you're basically just using your like your little charge gun thing that Samus has in that game, and it's a pretty easy enough fight to do. But my goodness, this boss this time was the biggest bastard. He was so hard. He was so difficult. I must have died like, I don't know, probably 20 times before I finally beat him. I was very clearly at this boss like way too early. I think if I would have had the plasma beam or the wave beam or something like that, it would have been a lot better, because you cannot use any missiles against this boss. You can only damage him with your beams, which makes sense because Samus didn't have access to missiles in Zero Mission. But yeah, this guy was all over the place. He was just waving around, going crazy. He was kind of doing like the Phantoon thing after you hit him with a super missile. He was going all the different directions. There was lightning coming down. There was like, there's tons of stuff going on. This guy was so insane. He was so hard. And I was thinking to myself, like, okay, like I'm in Turum, I'm fighting this Chozo test. The Chozo test is the last boss, basically, of Metroid Zero Mission. I'm in the area that connects to the last area of this ROM hack. Like, clearly I'm not supposed to be here yet. Like, clearly I should be, have a few more energy tanks or a better beam or something. But I eventually managed to beat him. And beat him I did. And I felt very accomplished. And I was like, man, that was really hard and did not need to be as hard as that was. But, it puts hair on your chest. One thing that I thought was very, very cool, and this is I don't know. I don't want to say it's a spoiler, but I was surprised by it. So if you don't want to hear this, fast forward like a minute. But when I got to Latorian and went to the underground water section that was in Sector 4, who should show up but Ceres? And this was an awesome boss, and I think they did a slight remix of Ceres' theme, or maybe it's just like his actual theme, and I just heard it for an extended period of time. But this fight was awesome. I was happy to see Ceres. I would love to see Ceres in like a 3D Metroid Prime game. I think that would be so awesome. But I loved seeing Ceres in AM2R. I think he's a great boss in Metroid Fusion. One of the standout tracks in that game as well, and he showed up here, and he was tough. I have a strategy to beat him in Metroid Fusion where I basically just sink to the bottom of the platform that you're on, and you do not have the gravity suit at this time, but it's an effective strategy because you're underwater and you can see him bubbling up, and then his head will pop up, and when you see the bubbles, you can fire your beams and it'll hit his head because he'll poke it out. So I tried to replicate that. I hit him like 20 times with beams, and he just kept on like going crazy, flying around at Mach speed, and I was like, this is not working. So after I died, I switched over to super missiles and popped him in the head a couple times, and finally got him down that way. But yeah, it was very cool to see my dude Ceres back in a game. I just thought it was like very cool because, like, I mean, I don't know the logistics about like mixing from game to game, but I don't know. I wasn't expecting a whole lot of like Metroid Fusion stuff in this game. So I thought that it was just like super badass that, this boss from Metroid Fusion showed up in an area that was from Metroid Fusion. So it's very cool. It was a highlight actually of the game for me. One of the couple highlights of the game here. So that was very cool. What I cannot say was a highlight was fighting the dragon at the end of the game. You probably piece together who this dragon is. His name is Ridley. And so I was when I was going up there and I was going through Umbra, I was like, I hope that there is something that they do to make Ridley more challenging, because I think that in Metroid Fusion, but definitely in Metroid Zero Mission, Ridley is like such a pushover. I have very fond memories of fighting Ridley in Super Metroid and just like that being a complete brawl and like throwing out like 100 missiles at him and 50 super missiles, and like he's still there, he's still ticking. Where I find that in Zero Mission specifically, but also Fusion, but definitely Zero Mission, he's just like so easy. Like I feel like I could fight him blindfolded and like I would have no problem. And unfortunately they didn't really do anything. He was the same Ridley that you fought in Zero Mission. he does do the pogo. He does kind of snap at you with his tails. He will pick you up if you allow him to get close enough. But no matter what he does, like dodging the pogo is super easy. Dodging the tail is easy. He can pick you up. That's fine. You can just hit him in the face with missiles and he'll drop you. It's like such an easy fight, and that's the end boss of the game. So it's just kind of like, oh, okay, well, I beat the tar out of Ridley. Like I guess I'll call it quit now. So I do wish that they would have, I don't know, made it a little bit more challenging. What could have been cool actually is, I don't know, maybe you do like a Ridley, and also there's like Ridley Robot or something there. I'm not really sure, but it was kind of an easy way to go out on the game, which was the only kind of negative I would have to say about the bosses. Otherwise, they were all very, very cool. So yeah, once you get your 6 runes, you can go fight the dragon, aka Ridley, and as soon as you beat him, that is the game. There's no escape sequence, nothing like that. So you beat Ridley, you get the heck off this planet, and your boredom is satiated. So there you go. One cool thing about this game, like I said earlier, is all of the items and everything are like in RPG terms, and there a few items stuck out to me, and just a few things about the items as well. But I chuckled because like I got the Swole Cloak pretty early in the game, and the Swole Cloak is the gravity suit, which was in Latori. And one thing that I appreciated about this game is that very early on in Mons, you see like the heated areas that you take damage if you go into, but like right after, almost as soon as you see those, like within 5 minutes, you have the Varia suit. Or there are some sections in Latori where you go down and like it's flooded with water, but within 5 minutes of that, you have the gravity suit. So you're never really competing against the elements for very long before you have the appropriate equipment to make it through. So one thing that I did, I mentioned that I was fighting the Chozo test boss earlier, and I was definitely there too early, for sure. But one of the advantages to tackling Turim as early as I did was I got the screw attack like almost within like 30 minutes of the game, which made the rest of the enemies a piece of cake, and also picked up the power bombs as well. So that kind of helped me scrounging around for items and stuff like that. The high jump boots are now called hops, which, quote, were once worn by Michael Jordan, so you know that this item is good. It also gives you the spring ball. A couple items that are not in this game are the Spazer Beam, and now that I'm thinking about it, I don't actually remember if that's in Zero Mission proper at all, but I know that the Space Jump is, and that was not present in this game. And I'm not really sure why. It was definitely weird not to have it. But thankfully, one thing that was not present in this game was the Power Grip, which is just like such a lame item in Zero Mission. Just lets you grab ledges. Thankfully, Samus can just grab ledges right from the very beginning. So thank God for that. I wanted to talk about the map really quickly because I do want to say I love Super Metroid. Like I said, it's probably one of my favorite games. But that's a 30-year-old game at this point. And in-game maps have come a long way in the last 30 years. And my God, you guys, it was so nice to play a hack that shows you, like, first of all, the blue for like the main areas that you're supposed to be in, but the green areas that are secrets. And I almost cried tears of joy when I saw like the circles that tell you that expansions are hidden there that turn into dots after you've got them. Oh my God, I was so happy to see these. It made me so happy to have this like small, simple thing. And you know what else made me happy too? You could open your map, you could press select, and you could go to a different area. Whoa! I feel like I've been bitching about this for like basically every single Super Metroid hack that I've ever done. How you can only see the area that you're in with the current map. I was like, how hard can this be? It can't be that hard. This game does it. It's so easy. It's so simple. It's so nice. It makes, actually, particularly at the end of the game, when you're going through, and another great thing that this game does, which Metroid Fusion does as well, is after you've beaten the game, it will show you like, okay, how many power bomb tanks, how many missile tanks, how many super missile tanks are left in the area. And so like if when you can section through all of the different areas of the game, it makes it so much quicker in just being like, okay, well, like I gotta go here, here, and here if I'm gonna go round up and get 100%. So the map was so awesome. It was easy to traverse. It was simple. It was straightforward. The pacing was really good. It always kept you kind of going to where you needed to go, and there was no shenanigans either. Sometimes this isn't a thing so much in Metroid Fusion, or in Metroid Zero Mission rather, but it is in Metroid Fusion, where sometimes you'll look at the map and a couple points connect you to each other, but the SAX has come in and like destroyed the door, so you can't actually go through, even though the map says that you can. Ugh, that like drives me nuts in Metroid Fusion. And so there's none of that. There's none of those shenanigans in this game, which is very, very nice. So I guess in conclusion, I would say that this was a really fun hack, and I have a few housekeeping notes here. One thing that I would say as, no, I guess like a critique. It's not really a critique though, but like something that I enjoy that wasn't really in this game a whole lot, is there weren't really any Shine Spark puzzles to speak of. There were definitely a bunch in Zero Mission and in Fusion that were really incredible, that kind of had you flying around, or like there was that one that everybody talks about in Zero Mission where you basically have to climb like 8 sets of stairs and keep your Shine Spark and run up and then crouch and then jump and charge and crouch and blah, blah, blah. There was one particular expansion in Arcs that was kind of like this, where you had to Shine Spark, crouch, jump, run up a slope, crouch, jump, and Shine Spark and run, and then you could get the expansion. And that was pretty much the extent of the Shine Spark puzzles. So I noticed it. I don't think it's going to ruin the experience at all, but I really love those kind of puzzles. And this game doesn't really have a lot. And actually, what this game doesn't have at all, which I didn't think about until after I rolled the credits for the first time, was I was like, oh, there's no Zero Suit section, which I guess makes sense, because it's a little bit, I'm assuming it's probably a little bit harder to do those sections and whatever. But yeah, there was no Zero Suit section, which is too bad, because I thought that would have been kind of cool. Or like, I don't know, if there's like I think it'd be a cool opportunity to have like a stealth hack out there that's like just the Zero Suit sections or something like that. I think that it could work really, really well. But yeah, no Zero Suit section in this game, unfortunately. So yeah, I ended up I beat this game twice, actually. The first time, my time was 2 hours and 14 minutes, and I got a whopping 95% of items. So I was just like, oh, well, you know, if I'm gonna finish the game with 95%, I might as well finish with 100. So I ended up going back. I spent about another 20 minutes getting the items, and I beat Ridley again. So my final time was 2 hours and 34 minutes with 100% items. And some cool stuff once you beat the game. So you unlock the original Nestroid, just like you do in the regular Zero Mission, and you get the gallery as well. So when I had 95% items, I had my boy Crocomire as the victory screen or whatever. But when I got the Hundo, I had Zero Suit Samus, and it transitioned, and it showed like the dragon from Skyrim, which was very cool. So lots and lots and lots of good things about this hack. It was very nice to play just like a different game, you know, like a different a game that wasn't Super Metroid or wasn't Nestroid, you know, and it's not 30 years old or whatever. It's a little bit more modern. So I really liked that, and I really liked this hack. I would definitely recommend it. It's short, it's fun, it's simple, it's to the point. It's a little bit different than your average Metroid game. And as long as you're not doing Turum, like the second area like I did, it's pretty easy too. So you should have a nice, simple time with it. And lots of good stuff for it. Original soundtrack, I think, really adds. I mentioned this before, but like to me, an original soundtrack just like really helps a game like this stick out and kind of feel more unique and forge more of an identity. And I think that having a hook like this one does too, with like the RPG elements, also kind of helps it just be a little bit more distinctive as well. So I would definitely recommend checking this out. You'll have a nice little time, I think. So that's it. That's all. that is Metroid Scrolls 6. And I'm pretty excited for next month, because I'm going to keep the Game Boy Advance Metroid going here, and I'm going to do my first ever Metroid Fusion hack. So looking forward to that. As always, you guys, just want to thank you for supporting Omega Metroid. And I hope that you're digging these shows. If you have any recommendations for ROM hack reviews, by the way, let me know. Because if you guys have any that you think are interesting that you want me to check out, I would love to do that. So yeah, let me know over in the Patreon channel. Thank you all for checking these episodes out and for supporting the website and the podcast and everything like that. And we will see you next month. Take care.